Springfield Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting is called to order. Please stand and we'll have the pledge. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for being here tonight for our regular meeting for August. 1.2, we'll have the approval of the minutes from the regular meeting of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen held on July 21st, 2020. Are there any corrections? No corrections? We're ready for a vote.
We need a motion.
Oh, we need a motion and a second. I always forget this on the minutes. I'm just trying to make sure everybody's awake and ready. Motion was made by Alderman Gregg. I'm sorry.
Something wrong. It's not set up. Correct.
We're having technical difficulties with Alderman Sneed's machine. We had a second by Alderman Hubbard. We're going to take a brief minute to get this up and running. Thank you. Okay, we're ready for a vote if there's no corrections. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Now we will start our public hearings. If you would like to speak for one of the public hearings, please come to the mic, state your name, and you have 2 minutes to speak. Our first public hearing is Ordinance 20-15, ordinance rezoning 9 parcels located in the 9th Civil District on 17th Avenue East from MH Mobile Home District to MRO Multiple Residential and Office District. Is there anyone that would like to speak? Please come to the mic. No one would like to speak? The public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 2, ordinance 20-16, ordinance rezoning 6 parcels located in the 9th Civil District on Baldwin Lane from R20 Low Density Residential District to R7 High Density Residential District. If you'd like to speak, please come to the mic. Please come to the mic. Please state your name and address, and then we'll start the timer.
Jacqueline Duke, 201 Hart Lane,
Take the mask off,
Springfield.
please.
Please, pull it down. Thank you.
Did you get a name?
Okay, we're ready.
Okay. Jacqueline Duke, 201 Hart Lane, Springfield. I live on the corner of Baldwin and Hart Lane, right there. Been there for 4 years, I guess. And what I've got to say is just that the impact of rezoning this and putting more houses there is destroying our infrastructure, what we have. I mean, it's already taxed the sewer system and the water system, and we've already had breaks and leaks and all kinds of stuff. Plus the traffic. It's 24 hours a day, all night long. You know, it's just not enough room for the amount of people. And the traffic is just, you know, non-existent. I mean, it's just everywhere, which I'm sure the whole city's having that problem. But that's all I've got to say. I just, you know.
Thank you.
It's impacting us already, the homeowners out there, the ones that are left. You know, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Raymond Francis, 4652 Dunn Road. here in Springfield. Now, I have a petition signed by everybody out there, 27. Who do I need to give that to?
You can pass it around.
Pass that around. First of all, I want to compliment Jim Moore for trying to cooperate with us. Unfortunately, we still have problems with that project. That's why I'm here. But he has tried to work with us, to be honest with you. And I want to talk about 2 or 3 things. One, do you realize that that ordinance, if you passed it tonight, is not the 6 houses that some of us have been talking about, it's 9 houses, if you go along with that ordinance. And he can build them anytime he wants to. He may choose to build them later on, but he can. And it does cause a traffic problem. From Southfield Apartments to South Main is about a football field. There is 125, 150 cars in that area that's driven every day from that area. There's over 1,000 low-income apartments and homes from 22nd Avenue all the way to Lambert Court. You can just imagine the traffic problems that we have today, and it's going to get more. Second, I don't know why anybody would want to build right next to Southfield, because we have the highest crime rate in Springfield. It's very high. So they would be emptying out right into the Southfield problems, where you all in the city council, you know we got problems there. And third is that I have an easement that I hadn't brought up, I thought would be solved by now. But I have an easement that runs from South Main Street, my meter's on South Main Street in front of Baldwin's house, goes through 4 properties, the 4th being mine. It's about a half mile long. Now, my attorney told me to ask Mr. Moore and them to convey that in a deed. I have that easement and then in other deeds. And we had a discussion, but that has not come about. And I've had problems with that water line before, because the city, when they annexed my property in 1978,
Your time is up.
they did not put a water line in, and I have to maintain it. So I'm very worried about that easement. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak to the public hearing? Please come to the mic, state your name and state your address, and you have 2 minutes to speak. Hello.
Hello, I'm Jane Stagner. I live at, well, my property is at 2505 South Main Street. My daughter and her family live there now. And my property, well, the boundary line, evidently, their property marches up to the side of my house, or maybe a foot from the side of the house. And my problem is that there's a lot of foot traffic from Southfield Apartments, and they're going to Walmart, and they're cutting right across my front yard. And we never have really tried to make an issue of it, but it's getting to be more and more of a problem, because people, there's no sidewalks on South Main, so they're not going to go around to the end of Baldwin Lane when they can cut across my yard. And so with these houses there, I have a feeling that it's going to channel more traffic more directly across my front yard, because some of the people will actually go through the Baldwin yard, but half of them will go through my yard. But with these houses being built there, it'll probably be more, all of them going across my front yard. My little grandson's dog gets up and barks at them, and from the inside of the house, and they'll slap the side of the house, and slapping at the dog and just things like that. And the bedroom is right there in the front, so that's where they pass with all the talk and the arguments and things that are going on right there in the front yard, right in front of the window. So that's my problem.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Please come to the mic. There's no one else that would like to speak. The public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 3, ordinance 20-17, an ordinance abandoning the right-of-way at the intersection of Baldwin Lane and Harp Lane. If you would like to speak, please come to the mic, state your name and address. Is there anyone that would like to speak? If not, the public hearing is closed. Public hearing number 4, ordinance 20-18, an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021's annual budget for the city of Springfield by amending certain general funds and utility funds operating budget. If you would like to speak, please come to the mic, state your name. There's no one that would like to speak. Public hearing is closed. 2.1, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 20-13 on a third and final reading, or ordinance to adjust the security light rental rates of the Springfield Electric Department. We need a motion and a second to discuss. Motion made by Alderman Gregg and a second made by Alderman Hubbard. Are there questions and discussion on our third and final reading? No discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change the vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.2, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 20-14 on a third and final reading, or ordinance rezoning the corner of Ruth Street and Golf Club Lane from R10 to MRO. We need a motion and a second to discuss. Motion made by Alderman Hubbard and a second by Alderman Trotter. Questions? Discussion? We're ready for a vote. Would anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.3, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 20-15 on a second reading. A ordinance rezoning 9 parcels located in the 9th Civil District on 17th Avenue East from MH Mobile Home District to MRO Multiple Residential and Office District. We need a motion and a second to discuss. Motion made by Alderman Hubbard. Do we have a second? Second made by Vice Mayor Harris. Questions and discussion?
I'm pleased to see the work going on there.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? No other discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.4, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 20-16 on a second reading. A ordinance rezoning 6 parcels located in the 9th Civil District on Baldwin Lane from R20 Low Density Residential District to R7 High Density Residential District. Do we have a motion to discuss? And a second. Motion made by Alderman Gregg and a second by Alderman Hubbard. Discussion? Mr.
Yes.
Sneed.
There was I'm looking at the map that we have here, and Mr. Francis just brought to our attention there's a water easement. I don't see that on the maps that we've been provided for the last 2 or 3, well, this will be about third time I've seen it, but where's the easement in there that we need to be aware of?
Okay. Okay. Can someone answer that, Ms. Holt?
Mr. Beers, do you know where it is?
I'm not specific what the easement is. I know where the service line goes across back through the property.
But we can't very well build houses.
Can
We can't very well build houses on top of man's water
I
line.
think that's what Mr. Moore and Mr. Francis are discussing about how to do away with that as far as the service line and the easement. I think that's what they were talking about.
Okay, if we're going to have more discussion, we probably need you to come to the mic.
Mr. Beers, we go to the mic. You're muffled, we can't really quite. Because I need to hear the clarity about that service line.
Well, I mean, the service runs across the property, and I'm a little naive on as far as how the legalities of between Mr. Moore and Mr. Francis on how that's working. But there was an agreement with Mr. Francis to relocate a meter so his service would be off of there. And that was to come on down to Dunn Road. That goes back to, I want to say 2014, 15, that we were supposed to relocate there. And I told Mr. Francis will do that anytime. That's part of an agreement with Mr. Nutting and I think Roger LeMasters. I think they were doing that. But I don't have that in front of me, Mr. Sneed, to to see the actual easement on there, but I don't know if that's, David, if that's there or it's,
I think these are just tax maps.
I don't know if it's
aren't they?
prescriptive or something to there. I don't know that.
Well, I mean, if we're going to be asked about rezoning something, I would hope that the staff would give us more than a tax map and show us easements. I mean, that's pretty important.
Yes.
And if it hadn't been for the public hearing, Mr. Francis telling us about it, we'd all been unaware of this. That has to be addressed.
Yeah.
And if you're just going to move a water meter down the street, he lives a half a mile off the road.
Yes, sir.
Well, who's going to pay for a half a mile of water line?
That was, this is a service line. This is his service. I'm not aware of an easement actually being there, Mr. Sneed, so
That's what Mr. Francis just said.
I think that's what the reference was, and about he spoke to his attorney, Mr. Moore. I think that's where they're making a reference.
Well, I mean, I don't want to do anything here that would put anyone legally, this should be resolved before it gets to us if there's issues like that.
Okay.
Understood?
Any other,
Says we have the map. Okay.
okay, we got a map.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a copy of the deed that says the easement from long many years ago.
I'd like to see a copy of that, Mr. Upton.
I think we have a map that's on the screen now.
Okay. Ms. Francis, can I see a copy?
It's the easement, yeah, that's the easement on it, looks like.
I got these kind of strapped the other day.
Okay, the easement is on the screen. Is it not, Mr. Ryan?
I'm not sure. Mr. Moore may need to speak to that. He provided us the map this afternoon.
Okay.
To be better, more description and tax map. If you want to address that. Sure.
Come to the mic, please.
Thank you for having me. We were aware of Mr. Francis's water line service. I'm not aware of an easement, or else Steve Arts would have picked it up on this plat, which has been done in the last 60 days. We don't have any intention of leaving Mr. Francis without his water line, but I don't believe an easement's in place. If it was, it'd be on this map, or Mr. Beer, somebody would know about it. So, Mr. Francis, you may want to help me out here, but I believe the service is going to come somewhere through this area here.
I don't see where it's going.
Come on up, Mr. Francis.
Comes off of South Main.
About 900 feet.
Somewhere in this area. So,
Where's your shed in?
the old restaurant?
Yeah.
Here. So, there's enough room in the building envelope to build homes without affecting his water surface. No easements in place.
That's not what that deed says.
Okay, and we're passing it around. Thank you, Mr. Francis, for the,
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
So how many houses do you intend to put out there?
That's not a proper easement.
5,
here, on.
17 through 32. And we're not going to do anything on Dunn Road. It's not.
Oh, yeah.
It would have to be upgraded to a large degree, which is most likely cost prohibitive at this point. So the original plat you have shows Park Lane, and then 6 homes, which we could start engineering and do tomorrow. We want 5 homes and no road for the city to maintain going forward. Also, the road will not have a cul-de-sac. It's not recorded with a cul-de-sac. So there's that to keep in mind for school buses and fire. I just feel like this is a better result for all involved. It's less homes, if that's the goal.
But there's a surety that his water service line will not be affected, correct?
Okay, I'm gonna let's pause here for a minute, because I took Mr. Francis's papers to our city attorney, Ms. Barty, and we need her to tell us about that water line easement.
Now, Mr. Mr. Mayor, I have another easement here, goes through Southfield.
Yeah.
The lawyer
Okay,
goes from his property all the way through Southfield to my property.
okay. Ms. Bartu? We may ask
So-
for that in a minute.
So in reviewing the quitclaim deed where Venture 24 LLC acquired this property, the document states that the property herein conveyed may be subject to an easement for a water line which serves a specific tract of land. May be subject. That's no indication that a water line exists,
Okay,
that there is an actual deeded easement for this water line.
okay. All right. Anyone have, Mr. Trotter?
Mr. Moore, you said something about you could probably build 9 homes. That's not your intention. Is it your intention to build any more than the
No, sir.
65 or 67?
Our intentions are, so, the old Baldwin restaurant, which, just been renovated, is here. So we'll have 5 homes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're not gonna develop Dunn, because Dunn, we couldn't get permits to build these without working with Public Works to improve Dunn Lane. So that's not the case. It's 5 lots here. Current plat is 6.
And whether we go yeah or nay, you still can be on the run.
If you vote no, we're gonna go pull permits to start 6. Absolutely, yes, sir.
Thank you.
We're just trying, we'd rather face them toward Baldwin. I think that's the natural thing to do, and we don't want to build the road, don't want the city to have to maintain it.
Okay,
So we're willing to sacrifice a lot.
all right.
Thank you.
Other
you.
questions while Mr. Moore is at the mic? Mr. Francis, if you want to bring the other piece of paper to our attorney, you're welcome to.
Can I get a copy of the back?
Oh, she'll give it back to you.
Okay, good. That means after 42 years, I don't have an easement on this property. Interesting.
Here's your.
Okay. Okay, other questions while we're waiting? Yes, sir.
As far as, and it may be a question for the city attorney, I'm not sure if we proceed with this rezoning tonight, as far as if the question of the easement or not the easement, is that between Mr. Francis and Mr. Moore?
Yes, sir, that's correct. From a real estate title perspective, Mr. Moore, if there is in fact a deeded easement to this property, Mr. Moore cannot ignore that easement. He bought this property subject to that easement, and he would be obligated to work around it. The easement that Mr. Francis has just passed to me references MFC 100 Southfield LLC. Obviously, I have not searched the title on this property, but the grantor of this water line utility easement does not match the grantor in the deed where Mr. Moore acquired the property. So I have no way of knowing if these two easements are, that Mr. Francis referenced, are the same. But again, and I know that Mr. Moore is well aware of this, if there is a deeded water line easement to this property, then he is obligated to honor that easement and observe the rights of the dominant party, which would be Mr. Francis in that easement.
Regardless of our action.
Regardless of your action, correct.
Okay.
Mayor,
Other questions? Mr. Steen?
for the city attorney. Assuming Mr. Francis, having resided at that location for 42 years, does have a water line through the middle of the property that's in question to be rezoned, going from South Main through 4 different individuals' pieces of property to get to his house. If there's a lack of a documented easement, what happens to his water line?
He could certainly file a court action to have a formal easement declared.
Since this has been brought to our attention, should we throw the individuals who lived there for 42 years into a situation where he has to do that before this gets resolved?
That would be setting a public policy, Mr. Sneed, and that is not in my purview.
What if I were to make a motion to amend this, that it be approved on second reading pending satisfactory resolution to this water line serving Mr. Francis' home?
Mr. Sneed, that is an issue between the two property owners. Mr. Beers stated that this is a service line. It is not a water line. It is not a public water line. It is just like the water line that runs from the water main to your house.
Right.
And so this would be an issue for them to resolve,
So
not for the board.
We got two individuals asking this board for something. We got one individual asking to rezone so he can build a group of homes. We've all agreed with what he wants to do. There's no question about that. And then there's another individual who's just brought to our attention who's asking this board to give him relief and attention. So we got two individuals that want attention that this board could I think the board could help both at the same time and not put one at a disadvantage.
But my understanding, Mr. Sneed, is that this is already a platted subdivision zoned for a certain number of lots and a certain number of homes. So whether or not the board approves or passes this on a second reading does not interfere with Mr. Moore or Venture 24's ability to move forward.
Well, I can make an amendment. I can make a motion to amend any kind of way that this board would agree to. Is if it passes, then that would be in the main motion, correct?
Say that again.
If I were to make a motion to amend, if I were to make an amendment to the motion, that this be approved on second reading pending satisfactory approval of this water line situation between the two parties, we could pass it.
We can't get involved in a water line dispute, can we?
This is a property rights dispute between two private citizens, and it is not the purview of the board.
Okay. Other questions for our city attorney or anyone else on our staff? Mr. Sneed?
Move to table the motion until next month.
Mr. Sneed has made a motion to table. Is there a second? We need to do that through the computer?
He needs to amend.
Okay. You need to amend.
Just so I can put it in.
Okay. She's going to put it in the computer. Then we will vote through our,
I'll put it in the
Okay.
amendment.
sir,
Y'all have it. Somebody needs to make a second if they want to.
do we have a second on his motion?
I have a question.
Question?
Now, by tabling it, what does that stop? I mean, what's the point of tabling it?
Madam Attorney?
Mr. Sneed said table till next month. I think under Robert's rules, the correct term would be postpone to the September meeting, to postpone to a definite time. And really, all that does is move it to next month.
We're still in the same position.
Well, my understanding, Mr. Moore said he can start building the houses tomorrow, so postpone another month is not.
Okay. Do we have a second on his motion? If there's no second, the motion fails. Back to the discussion on the main motion. Any other questions before we're ready to vote?
I have a question for
Yes, sir.
Mr. Beers.
Mr. Beers, will you come to the mic, please?
Is there any known problem with the sewer or water capacity in this area?
No, sir. No, we've done some improvements through that area, so he'll be able to do those. We've already looked at a capacity request from Mr. Moore to add those customers to the actual sewer main, and they will accept that.
Okay.
Okay. Then I have a question for Chief Head.
Chief Head, please come to the mic. Vice Mayor Harris has a couple of questions, and others may too.
In the past, this board, it's been brought to this board's attention about the crime rate of this particular area and other zoning things that have come before us, and it's been stated again tonight. Is there any thing that you need to shed on this, or as far as?
A specific question, you know.
Is it the highest crime rate?
No.
In Springfield?
No.
That area?
No. Are you talking about the entire ward? Because that's a long ward through there. Not in that area, in that ward, no.
Okay.
I mean, I would think a lot of that crime would be.
The biggest crime in that particular vicinity out there is retail crime. And that, I don't want to name.
Right, I understand.
That, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions before I call for the vote? No more questions? We're ready for a vote. Mr. Sneed, would you like to vote?
Well, I did, I didn't take.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I thought you did. Okay. Anyone like to change their votes? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 5-2.
Thank you. 2.5, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 20-17 on a second reading. An ordinance abandoning the right-of-way at the intersection of Baldwin Lane and Harp Lane. Do we have a motion to discuss and a second? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard, second made by Alderman Trotter. Okay? Discussion? Questions? No discussion or questions? Mr. Trotter?
Okay, so this passes, instead of, we want to maintain the highway, right? This cul-de-sac, we will not have to maintain the cul-de-sac.
Ms. Holt?
That's correct. This is giving it up.
Thank you, Alderman Trotter. Any other questions? No other questions? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. 2.6, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 20-18 on a second reading. An ordinance amending the fiscal year 2021's annual budget for the city of Springfield by amending certain general funds and utility fund operating budget. Motion made by Vice Mayor Harris, second made by Alderman Hubbard. Ms. Holt? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say, this needs to be amended. We've added 2 items. We've added the Walmart grant for $2,500 and funds for the THSO. So we need to amend this before we approve the main motion.
What was the second item?
The Tennessee Highway Safety Fund, grant funds.
All right. Would anyone like to make that? Oh, they're ahead of me. Motion made. Would anyone like to make that?
They did.
All the question me.
That is the amendment.
I'm sorry, I don't see that on the screen. Oh, okay. Sorry. Vice Mayor Harris, and a second by Alderman Trotter to amend. Any discussion on the amendment? No discussion? We're ready for a vote on the amendment. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Amendment passes 7-0.
Thank you. Now we gotta go back. Back to the main motion that is amended. Any questions? Discussion?
Ready to vote.
We're ready to vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 2.7, discuss and possible take action on ordinance 2020 on a first reading, or ordinance closing the portion of Cheatham Street that crosses the CSX right-of-way. This is a first reading, so I'll ask Ms. Brickles to read it.
Ordinance 2020, an ordinance closing the portion of Cheatham Street that crosses CSXT right-of-way. Whereas the Board of Mayor and Aldermen has approved a construction agreement with CSXT Transportation Incorporated to repair the collapsed stormwater culvert near Memorial Boulevard, and whereas the terms of the construction agreement executed by CSXT and the City of Springfield provide for financial contributions to the project by CSXT in the amount of $535,200, and whereas the terms of the construction agreement executed by CSXT and the City of Springfield require the city to permanently close the at-grade railroad crossing on Cheatham Street in order to receive the financial contributions from CSXT, and whereas the Cheatham Street crossing has been the site of various accidents over the years, and whereas the city intends to execute a separate crossing closure agreement with CSXT that shall detail the manner in which the crossing is permanently closed, and whereas the city shall assign directional naming in order to avoid confusion between the two separate sections of the street. Now therefore be it ordained by the Board of Mayor and Aldermen of Springfield, Tennessee as follows. The portion of Cheatham Street crossing CSXT right-of-way shall be permanently closed in accordance with the terms of the crossing closure agreement and the construction agreement executed with CSXT. The section of Cheatham Street that is north of the crossing towards 7th Avenue is hereby renamed North Cheatham Street in accordance with Section 16-501 of the Springfield Municipal Code. All ordinances and policies in conflict herewith are hereby rescinded to the extent of the conflict only.
Thank you. I will say, when I read that, I didn't put the T in CSX. It just rolled off my tongue, CSXT. Ms. Brickles is right. Do we have a motion to discuss and a second? Motion made by Alderman Arnold and a second by Alderman Hubbard. I'm sure there's discussion on this subject. Yes, sir.
Some
Mr.
questions,
Harris?
I would guess, for the city manager.
Yes, sir.
We have not been supplied a copy of this contract or anything, have we?
Yes, the contract is item 3.11. The closing agreement.
The closing agreement, okay. All right, what, and exactly through this and this amount of money that they're stating in this, is this an all or none situation?
It is. As you know, last month, the board approved the construction contract with CSX to allow us to work with them on their property. This is the closing agreement, but in last month's construction agreement, it stipulated that CSX agrees to pay the city $532,200 per the following terms and conditions. Prior to the first distribution of payment by CSXT to the city will initiate its formal due process to facilitate the permanent closure of the at-grade crossing of Cheatham Street. The city will advise CSXT in writing when formal closure process is initiated. $267,600 to be paid to the city within 90 days of the fully executed construction agreement, a receipt of invoice from the city, and receipt of the notice of the formal crossing closure initiation. And then another $267,600 to be paid within 90 days of completion of the project. So what we're saying, last month we said we were going to initiate this process. And so if we initiate it, we follow through on it. We don't play games. We don't want to get that reputation. So it was pretty clearly debated last month that if we expect to get the $535,000 in funds from them, we have to close that.
Was there not something discussed last month that we have to pay 180-something thousand?
We have to pay $189,200, but we would have to pay that regardless. But you can look at it as, okay, we have to pay that. We would have to pay it anyway. But if you want to subtract out the 189 from the 535, it's still a net of 346,000. But it's a $500,000. And our budget for stormwater is currently in the red about just under $20,000, I think. So this would make the difference on that. But
this
that's all I can say.
This particular crossing has been there as long as I can remember.
All of our lives.
I'm 53 years old, and it's been there since I can remember. But the whole gist of this is to get money to fix this problem on Memorial Boulevard.
Correct. Which is a safety problem.
It is a safety problem, but what, as a city, are in this, what do we feel is the exact problem here, and who is at fault in this problem?
We have said all along that the railroad should have some liability responsibility. This thing was built under the railroad, I mean, gosh, going back to 1800 something. So a collapsed stormwater culvert, you can't really say who's to blame. We didn't put it there. The railroad didn't put it there.
But by this contract, and I may be misstating it, I'm not sure, are they saying they feel they have no obligation in this other than if we close this crossing?
That's what they're saying. They're saying, you do this, you get this money.
That's not what he asked.
Has there been any
Mr. Harris didn't finish it.
counts done as to what the car traffic is over this
We do.
crossing?
We have some, Mr. Moore did that, and actually, I think you prepared it, go ahead and hand it out. We just got it this afternoon.
Okay.
I'll say while he's coming up here, we have a budget for this project of $1.6 million. And so $1.6 million, those funds would go a long way.
But yet we have it in the budget no matter.
We have it in the budget. We're spending it. We put it in the budget to pay $1.6 million.
Is there a timeline on this contract?
On the closing agreement?
Yes.
The closing agreement, which is 3.11, they will do everything. They will pay all the costs. They will do it on their terms, however they do it.
I mean, this is a lot of information.
Yes, it is.
If
You wanna-
Mr.
you
Moore
wanna
would
give
just
some
summarize.
Summary to it?
There you go.
Yes, if you look on the initial memo on the front page, it's where I've summarized it. Now, there's a lot of data you can go through and look at, but I'll explain it. We collected data on both Main Street and Cheatham in this area, and we ran it for 5 days through the whole week, and then took the peak times, which ended up being on a Friday, between the hours of 10:30 and 11:30 and 2:50 and 3:50 p.m. But if you look on the charts there on the front page of the summary, you'll see that on Main Street, the highest day was 5,806 vehicles per day. At the AM peak time, which is the 10:30 to 11:30 lunchtime, was 565 vehicles per hour, or it came out to be 9.4 vehicles per hour. And the PM peak, which is slightly lower at 516, with a 8.6 vehicles per minute. Now, on Cheatham Street, the same day, same time, actually, had the same peak time of 880 vehicles per day. The AM peak time, which was the lunch hour, was 77 vehicles per hour and 1.3 vehicles per minute. And then a PM peak of 88 vehicles per hour and 1.5 vehicles per minute. Now, using these numbers and assuming that all vehicles on Cheatham don't go to Richard or go any other direction, they go to Main Street, would result in a 6,686 vehicles per day, which came out to be about, with the AM peak of 642 and 6:04 on the PM. So that comes out to be about 10.7 vehicles per minute. The potential difference there, with the original being 9.4. Now, given that, that's an additional, it's an increase of 77 vehicles per hour during the peak time, and roughly 1.4 exactly vehicles, but let's say 2 vehicles extra a minute for 1 hour.
In this, then, was Cheatham Street chosen because it's in the middle of the three?
Well, it's the road being closed, so I chose that
No,
one.
I'm not
Oh, you
asking
mean
on your
for
part. I'm talking about from
CSX?
CSX.
Oh,
I don't really know. My guess is it probably is because it's so close to South Main and there's 3 of them, they're close together.
But we did no traffic count on Richard.
TDOT actually had records of that, and this, but we did not do a traffic count on Richard. But at the intersection of Richard and Central, on Richard, it had 808 vehicles per day. So it was very close to Cheatham, slightly less.
Okay. Mr. Trotter, we're just going to go around the room because I know this is a,
Has CXX said, what are they gaining by closing this?
They said that they are closing others, and it's a maintenance, it's a maintenance issue, basically. And they don't have to fool with it.
So they're willing to inconvenience all the residents and people that live in that area just so they won't have to fool with maintenance on a railroad crossing?
In essence, yes.
okay. Is that all, Mr. Trotter? Alderman Trotter?
Yes, how much money are they gonna save on maintenance? Did they state that?
No, they did not, because it doesn't affect us.
It's almost like they
Maybe
holding the city hostage, actually.
535.
It's almost like they're holding the city hostage. And that's not right. That's all I have.
Thank you. Alderman Hubbard?
I reserve to let the alderman and the board have to say so.
Okay. And I will state that I've had various phone calls for the past several weeks on this. I had a business owner, spoke to him late this afternoon, and he is very disturbed that his business uses this and his customers use this. And yes, I voted for it last month, but I think maybe that I haven't taken it all into consideration. Alderman Gray.
I voted for it to close, but I was wanting the money, not so much to close the crossing. The crossing's been there all my life, and I know that it would inconvenience some people if it were closed. So I don't know that I would vote to close it now.
Okay. Alderman Arnold.
I also voted for it to close last month, and it was more so because I was excited to see that finally be fixed on Memorial. I have a lot of folks that talk to me about the flooding there, but I have heard from several folks that live on Cheatham or near Cheatham, and they are very concerned not only about being able to cross back and forth, but their property values. And I think that we really need to take that into account as we vote for this time.
Okay. Alderman Sneed.
There's 10 residential homes on the south side of the tracks. I think there's 16 on the north side.
Excuse me, I think city attorney was going to mention that you have to disclose your work for the railroad.
Oh, yes, that's very true.
You know, to go on discussion.
You can continue, but that need to be on record.
Yeah. You can do that one.
I'm trying to think if you're going to,
You can discuss, but you have to do it.
Yeah, you just have to disclose it.
I guess when you do that, if you're going to have a conflict of interest, what's the conflict? How is this going to profit me?
It's a perceived conflict of interest. It does not affect your ability to vote, but I'm asking that you disclose it.
I'm employed by CSX.
Thank you.
I drive trains through Springfield.
Thank you. Which also means that you have some different knowledge, that it's important that the citizens understand how you have that knowledge.
Well, I thought, okay.
We all know it, but it has to be stated for the record. We're ready for your questions.
Ms. Holt, I called you on, I think it was Christmas Eve, about 2 years ago, about the flooding that was going on behind Farmers Bank. It was backing up. That was a sewer issue. Did this Black Creek, which is right there, is this, are they similar in circumstances as what we're talking about, the water going around the bridge?
Where we are currently, there's a lawsuit on some of that now, but that was a separate issue that was caused by the stormwater. So
Okay. So there's an act of God that backed up sewer lines, and there's a lawsuit.
there's a lawsuit, and that's probably all we can say.
I was about to say, I would appreciate, because this is actual pending litigation, that we not discuss that aspect any further.
I wasn't aware of that. Shouldn't we be aware of pending lawsuits?
It was
Generally not, it's one of these that insurance is going to pay for, but no.
Well, I would disagree with that.
Okay.
When we're sued, I think we should know about it.
Okay.
The water that's going around the bridge down there, when separate from the sewer issue, I found out that the tunnel had collapsed. I told you to initiate a lawsuit about it. What did you,
And the
how did
board-
you respond to that?
I couldn't initiate it. The board, I think, voted on that, or we discussed it, but I don't think
There's no vote
there
on
was.
that.
Yeah, we discussed it.
We discussed it. But the lawsuit would have been against CSX.
That's right. Because if they built this railroad, and in my records from dealing with the History Museum, it's in the mid-1850s, around 1856, 57, 58, somewhere in there. And that's their tunnel, and the water washes around the bridge, and somebody has an accident from the water being diverted into traffic from a collapsed tunnel that they built. Who's liable?
I can't answer that.
Just, I'm gonna leave that open. I think we could all figure that out without
And by
being a
the-
lawyer.
For the record, it was New Year's Eve, not Christmas.
Okay. So, I don't know who was in negotiations with the railroad. I don't think it was done well to come back with something like this, that they felt that there was some kind of weakness to make this counter offer, to tie in something completely different. But,
Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir. Mr. Harris?
I certainly, as an alderman for the city, we have to be vigilant in the money that we spend. And $535,000 is a lot of money. I don't want to see us miss that amount of money, but yet again, that crossing has been there. There's houses on that street. That's affecting people's everyday life. Whether we do this or we don't do it, this problem on Memorial has got to be fixed.
Absolutely.
One way or the other. And I would have to somewhat agree with Alderman Trotter and even with Alderman Sneed and what he said about, I realize going up against the railroad is a big thing to go up against. But in some sense of what they're offering to do here, they are accepting some liability in what's going on Memorial. But they're wanting to use it in another way to try to get something else that they want out of it. We have it in the budget. It would certainly be better that we not have to spend it out of the budget, but unless this board is agreeable, it's not the proper way that we hear from any citizens tonight, because it has to pass this reading to come to a public hearing. If this board feels that they want to bring it to that, to let the citizens speak against it, I'm fine with that. But going forward from that, I do not know that I can support this.
Okay. Other, Mr. Hubbard?
Specifically on Memorial Boulevard, that's in my turf. And I've been appalled by this for years. But, it does seem like we are robbing Peter to take care of Paul. And if we have to bite the bullet, maybe borrowing extra money to get that cleared up without closing that street. Because I've had an earful, but I wanted.
I think we've all had a lot of phone calls.
People who were affected, but certainly, I don't want to cause anyone any harm.
I think we were all talking about the money last time, and we didn't realize how many, I didn't realize, I'll speak only for myself, realize how many people this is going to affect. When retail business called me tonight and said how much the customers are using that street, I had to take a step back and think about that. Ms. Holt, were you wanting to say something?
I was just going to say that, of course, the project's going to continue regardless. We budgeted it, but I just want to make everybody I want to be perfectly clear. This is obviously the board's decision, but I want everybody to know it's stormwater funds. And what, if you vote this down, you're giving up $500,000. And I just want that out there on the record.
Sure.
But you're entitled to do whatever.
Okay. Mr. Harris?
But to give up $500,000, I understand that, but we shouldn't have that held over our head if they're responsible for this. And as a board, we may need to pursue if we have anything to go against them on. I mean, as I said, I know they're a big entity to go up against, but if they're responsible for this, I mean, I don't know fully what's taking place. I know it's been going on for half of the time that I've been here. Mr. Ellis is in the room tonight. He's retired. I know he's done quite a bit of the work that has led us up to this point. Mr. Moore's taken over since then. But if there's any degree of liability that the railroad has, then they should be held responsible for that liability. And as a board, you're saying we never voted on anything. Maybe we did discuss it on that, but we never voted to go forward. Maybe that's what we need to be looking at.
Maybe we should put that back on the agenda to discuss that.
Mike,
Question?
Okay.
I need that. Is
Hold on.
Mr. Ellis here?
Hold on.
This may be a question for the attorney.
Hold on.
Instead of voting on it, could this just be tabled?
Postponed.
I'm good.
You could, the board could move to postpone it to a definite time, to move it out a month. You all could vote on it. Obviously, this has 3 readings, so you all could vote on it tonight, have the public hearing next month, and that's 2 more votes that would take place. Okay. So, obviously, we can't have the public hearing until the 2nd reading.
So if it's voted down tonight, there will not be a second.
We're finished.
You're correct. We're done.
Okay. Mr. Steve, you were next.
I need the Public Works Director to come to the mic. I got some questions for him.
Mr. Moore?
Ms. Moore, I know that you're fairly new in this position. Have you apprised yourself of all the leases of the utilities and other things that we have dealing with the railroad and crossings for utilities?
Well, I don't get involved with too much with like sewer and gas and leases, but I'm familiar with the practice.
Right. All right. I'll refer this maybe Mr. Beers. He may be the more tenured person. Mr. Beers, you asked me about some help about a crossing not too long ago. What? Yes.
Mr. Moore, if you'll hang out, we may have other questions for you.
The railroad thinks 100 years in advance. They're a chess game 100 years in advance. We're thinking just a couple of years. Tell me tell the board about all the leases for utilities that you are aware of that could affect financial arrangements for our crossings throughout the city in future negotiations.
How many easements? I mean, how many do we have?
We've got a lot of.
We have several, and we have those, and I think we pay a yearly fee for those.
And those yearly fees are set, never go up, or they go up.
I can't answer. I know we pay a yearly fee for the easements that we do have.
Right.
Now, I came to you about another issue about transferring an easement one time, and you did assist me on that, on how to proceed with that.
Right. Well, when Mr. Ellis had a meeting with the railroad about the water going around the bridge, I had to make some phone calls, didn't even get any engineers up here about that. Because they didn't even want to talk about it. But we are in constant lease agreements with the railroad in other areas that could hurt us in other ways later.
In other ways, what do you mean hurt? What are you making reference to?
Financially.
That could if something failed? Is that what you're getting at? If I had another failure on a
Right.
crossing?
Yeah.
Oh, that's possible. Yeah.
So there's a bigger what I'm trying to get, there's a bigger picture going on with not just this crossing, not just this bridge, but there's other things that we have crossing and that
Yes,
we
sir.
deal with.
There's gas, water.
Yeah, our town's on
sewer.
two sides of tracks, and we have a lot
You're
of
correct.
relationship
You're correct.
with them.
We have some existing easements that cross there at Cheatham. They're to remain in place. Even if you close that, we still have a right-of-way to those.
Right.
Okay.
I just wanted the board to be aware of that. My point was to let y'all be aware, there's a big picture here of some other things going on.
Okay, let's all make sure we're speaking into the mics well, because we have rain coming down pretty hard. Yes, sir.
Yes.
One thing I want to say about that I'm not pleased with, it used to be in my ward, but now it's Mr. Steve, that he cut it up. It's all of the vehicles are stacked up and just, it's really sloppy. And I would love to see a cleanup at that spot.
Okay. Yes, sir, Mr. Harris.
Mr. Moore's Public Works, we may need to dismiss him now to go to Memorial. Anyway, I'd like to ask Alan Ellis to the podium, please.
Mr. Ellis? Vice Mayor Harris is called for Mr. Alan Ellis, who I'm sure knows this subject backwards and forward.
Last 3 to 4 years, we've dealt with this.
Alan, you've worked with this for several years, and not to have to go into a long explanation, but in your opinion of what you've seen as an engineer and the things that you've done, what is the problem at Memorial?
The tunnel did collapse. That is correct. There was a railroad tunnel, like Clay had said, was built in the it had to be built before the track was built. So it was around 1850s. And it was a rock tunnel. Back then, didn't have concrete, of course. They put in solid rock and then built rock up, and then had one solid rock across the top. Well, the pictures that I keep referring to we, but our guys went down in it. They were approved to get in it, and the top was falling in. And it's partially, it doesn't happen, maybe it won't happen in this storm, but if it happens in a higher frequency rain, it can't take it. But it'll take one like this if it'll go on and shut down pretty quick. So the tunnel collapsed. But as you may have known, Gina and all, I've fought on this thing with the railroad for years.
They felt no responsibility?
They've even wrote letters that
Their legal team reviewed and said they are not accepting liability.
Right. We didn't do it. It is Black Branch, which is what was an old creek that went through there. That was changed when they had to build the railroad in there back in the 1850s and was put underground with that tunnel. So that's some of the history, and we have dealt with it for years. And as Gina says, you vote, the money is budgeted. So it needs to move on. The project needs to move on.
I think that's taking place.
Yeah, the contracts have been signed and everything's moved on that. We lack one agreement from the railroad to come back that y'all approved last month. But otherwise, it's just been a nightmare from day one, as you know, and it's no telling how many emails and letters I've written to the state as well as to CSX.
Okay.
We try to get the state involved, but they will not get involved at all.
And one question to the city manager. Does the railroad CSX itself have the right to close any crossing in this city without approval?
Sure, oh, without approval? I think the case law
No.
says that the city would support, the city has to close it by ordinance. They own it, you know, it would be our legal team against the railroads, but they would probably take a different viewpoint, but we're going with the safe way that the ordinance would be the
Again,
way to do
I
it.
will state my personal opinion as Ward 4. I don't want to pass up the $535,000 from CSX, but I don't think this is the proper thing to be held our feet to the fire, for them to have a closing, for them to give us any money. But now, if this board wants to pursue to bring it to public hearing, I'm fine with that also.
Okay, other discussion before I ask for the vote? No other discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion fails 0-7.
Okay. 2.8, discuss and possible take action on Resolution 20-30, a resolution awarding the bid for the 2C construction project to Scott and Ritter, Inc. from Bowling Green, Kentucky. Do we have a motion to discuss this resolution? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Arnold. Questions?
I will say this came in under budget.
Please always point that out. That's a beautiful
Construction
thing.
part, it is.
That's beautiful. We like that. No discussion, we're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.1, discuss and possible take action on the adjustment of the retail electric rates of the Springfield Electric Department due to a wholesale fuel cost adjustment by the Tennessee Valley Authority. Do we have a motion to discuss? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Vice Mayor Harris. Do you have good news for us, Mr. Nick?
Retail rate down 1.7%.
Beautiful. Beautiful. No discussion? No questions? We better vote quick. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
3.2, discuss and possible take action on the adjustment of the monthly gas rates of the Springfield Gas Department. Do we have a motion to discuss in a second? Motion made by Alderman Arnold, second by Alderman Hubbard. Yes, sir. Do you have good news?
Yeah.
Good.
Purchase gas adjustment's down 9.25%.
Sweet.
That PGA of .2246 is the lowest by our federal cost. All bigger than purchase gas.
We'll expect this during the winter months.
But, yeah, it's supposed to go back.
I've been here a while. I know how that works.
Like using air to do it.
Yeah. Any discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.3, discuss and possible take action on an appointment to the Springfield-Robertson County Joint Airport Board. Do we have a motion to discuss? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard and a second by, do we have a second? Second by Alderman Sneed. Ms. Holt, I think this is,
Okay.
this has got complicated.
This is very complicated now. Mr. Sneed had asked to add his name as a replacement for Mr. Peterson. And he, Mr. Peterson has rescinded his retirement from the board. So I will let the city attorney explain where we are legally with this, but in essence, we do not have a vacancy on the airport board.
Okay. City Attorney Christy Barty.
Ms. Holt is correct. Last month, there was no action taken by the board to accept Mr. Peterson's retirement. It was pulled from the agenda. As such, there is no position to fill.
Okay.
Mayor.
So we shall move
Mayor,
on?
Correction.
Mr. Sneed.
Robert's Rules of Order doesn't say that you have to vote. You just have to acknowledge a resignation from a board. This board acknowledged there was a resignation.
However, the Tennessee case law requires that there is a vote.
You think Mr. Peterson's going to sue us to hold that seat?
That's not my decision, Mr. Sneed. My decision is to issue a legal opinion on whether or not the resignation is valid, and based on the case law, it is my legal opinion it is not.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Sneed, you got questions?
There was another part of that.
Well.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Holt said there's another.
The reason Mr. Peterson doesn't want to, what was the reasons why? There was a replacement that the board
I haven't talked to him.
picked. We turned that down. And I don't think that the board should be in a position that they think they have an heir apparent to everybody that comes off that board, that they can pick who goes back on it.
What
Are you
happened? Excuse me.
Are you referring to,
Last month, there was somebody that board sent to us to fill this vacancy. We were going to reject that person, withdrew before we had a chance.
how do you know how we were going to vote when they took their name off?
In my conversations with city manager, it didn't look good. And
I've never had a discussion with the city manager about that.
Okay, well, you asked me, and that's my answer to your question.
Thank you for answering it.
And there were some things that I was going to bring up that I think we could do better than finding somebody that's a career county politician to put on a city board to represent the city. And somebody that actually knows something about the airport.
Okay.
Hold
on just a minute.
There's another question, since we're talking about airport. I'll make a motion that we recall the city's dual appointee, at least a half of the city's dual appointee of Henry Hawks.
You've made a motion.
I'm making a motion
Okay,
to withdraw the
Let's make sure we
city's-
get this on the computer.
To withdraw and recall the city's half of a dual appointee, Henry Hawks, from the airport board.
Is he a dual
He's a joint appointee.
Okay, because I know he lives in the county. Okay.
And it's Hawk Ruth.
Yes. Hawk Ruth.
What did I say?
Henry Hawk.
Hawk Ruth. Colonel.
Ruth. Yes, that is confusing.
Colonel.
Hawk Ruth.
Ms. Barty, can we do that?
Unfortunately, Mr. Sneed, that motion is not proper. The board does not have the ability to recall an appointee.
Where are you citing this? Robert's Rules of Orders does say you can withdraw somebody from a committee if they're not doing, this is not a lifetime appointment, Madam Attorney. People who go on committees, who get us in lawsuits and do the things that are going on down there. I mean, I just made a records request. It took 9 weeks to get my records request fulfilled. And when I got that records request, they had redacted parts of it. That board is appointed by this board, and I'm getting redacted records, financial records, out of that place down there. And it took 9 weeks to get it. This is a pattern.
Mr. Sneed, again, I cannot speak. I don't attend the airport board meetings. I'm not the airport board attorney. All I can say is that, again, based on the case law, that we cannot recall this appointment.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Barty. Mr. Sneed, so your motion,
Send me that case law. I want to see it.
I assume we cannot move forward with the motion because we cannot break the
It
law.
wasn't second, but I want to see that case law.
Okay. Moving on for discussion. Mr. Hubbard?
For clarification, are we going to vote now to reinstate Mr. Peters?
No,
Is this motion going to be on?
No,
Accept his.
What happened last month is the recommendation came from the airport board. Mr. Bradley wasn't going to be here, and he was beginning to have second thoughts. So it was pulled. So the board didn't even discuss it. Which means that he he can rescind his request to be retired effective upon his replacement. So there's nothing to reinstate the way our city attorney.
That is correct. There is nothing to reinstate because his resignation was rescinded prior to the board accepting the resignation. It's the same principle that we talked about in January when Alderman Head resigned.
Sure. Thank you.
Mayor.
Okay, I've promised Mr. Trotter that he's next. Mr. Trotter, Mr. Steen, I'll come back to you.
I took the liberty of doing a little research on this myself today.
Yes, sir.
I was told that since we never accepted a resignation, there's not a vacancy. So to rescind, he just put it back on the board. There's no action to be taken.
Okay, Mr. Steen, you're next.
I disagree after having read Robert's Rules of Order. You're basing this on what the city attorney has told us. She's
sir.
told us wrong decisions before. I'd like to see the case law. It may be under different circumstances, but I disagree with what y'all are doing
Okay,
and how you're taking it.
all right. He's asked for the case law to be sent to him. Okay, other discussion?
So, really, we don't need to take any action. Move on.
No. Okay, we'll move on. 3.4, discuss and possible take action to approve the community grant in the amount of $2,500 from the Walmart Community Grant Team. The grant will be used for the third Friday night movie in the park. Do we have a motion to discuss and a second? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Arnold. Anytime we receive grants, we have to vote on them.
I'll make a comment.
Yes, sir.
Monday, they were showing the screen and getting ready for it. I mean, it was really nice.
It's exciting for us to have an event.
Big screen.
And we so appreciate Walmart for stepping up. Any discussion? No discussion? We're ready for a vote. I'll expect to see all of you in the park that night. Unless it rains. If it rains or you're in the park, bring toothpicks to hold my eyes open. We're ready for a vote. No more discussion? We're ready for a vote. Oh, I'm sorry. We already voted. I got off track.
Motion passes 7-0.
I got so excited about the movie. 3.5, discuss and possible take action to approve the change order number 3 with Cleary Construction, Inc. in the amount of $66,647.28 for Phase 5 Interceptor Project. The new contract amount is $7,286,435.78. Do we have a motion? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard to discuss and a second. Second made by Alderman Trotter. Questions? No questions on this project. We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
3.6, discuss and possible take action to approve the contract for Griggs Maloney, Inc. in the amount of $45,000 for engineering services to design the new Greenbrier Pump Station. Do we have a motion to discuss in a second? Motion made by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Vice Mayor Harris. Questions? Discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.7, discuss and possible take action to approve a contract from Griggs Malone, Inc. in the amount of $78,000 for engineering services for optimization upgrades at the wastewater treatment plant. Motion to discuss in a second, please. Motion made by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Vice Mayor Harris. Questions on this contract? No questions? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.8, discuss and possible take action to approve a contract with Community Development Partners, LLC, for program management services for the Phase 2C wastewater collection system upgrade. Motion to discuss made by Alderman Hubbard and a second by Alderman Trotter. Questions on this contract? No questions. We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. 3.9, discuss and possible take action to approve an employment contract for the position of the Electric Utilities Director. Motion made by Vice Mayor Harris and a second by Alderman Arnold. Ms. Holt.
Okay, Mr. Steven Sachs, who is the employee that, or the person that we're looking at for the employment contract, is here in the audience tonight if you want to wave or say anything, if you all have any questions. But I think my memo in the packet is it's self-explanatory. We've had a hard time finding a utility director, electric director. And we had some really good candidates, but the ones that we interviewed had no real senior management experience at all, and they were all above our top out pay anyway. So I think we're very fortunate that Mr. Sachs has agreed to work with us at a very discounted rate to, for the next 11 months, he would receive no benefits whatsoever. No sick, no holiday, no vacation, nothing. Except for get paid for the time he actually works. And so this agreement is what we could work out. He made it fit into our budget, and over this next almost year, he can be the one to come in and make sure that everything continues smoothly. He can look at the department, he can look at the structure, see what we need to do to move forward, how we need to address compensation. We're fortunate that when we hire within our ranks, we don't have to worry about the market rate. But when we don't have anyone moving up the ranks in a department, we have to go to market, and we are way off of market. And so that's what happened here. And like I said in the memo, Mr. Gardner could have gone someplace else and made twice what he was making here. But this was, I think it's a very good arrangement, and I think it'll help us out and give us time to step back and look at the situation and see what we need to do. We've got a very, very good department. We've got really good employees. Nikki does a phenomenal job. I hate to say that in front of him. But as far as keeping it running, I mean, they really do a good job. And as I've said before, it's low debt, about 1%. So we just want to do what we can that's the best for the employees and for the department and for Springfield. And we think that this is it. And so Ryan Martin and Nikki Pinson and I were the ones that did the interviewing, and this is what we came up with.
Well, and I have to say that reading the contract, I had to look at this contract and go, what about the rest of our employees? So I start calling around Middle Tennessee in the electric departments to see what other folks are being paid. And thank goodness for Leadership Middle Tennessee and having friends around Middle Tennessee that you can call on and see what they're doing at their electric departments. Our salaries are nowhere near anybody's salary. You know, I did my little individual study, and I think this is probably the best thing for us. And I know y'all put a lot of time into this, and I know you pinch dollars.
I'll try.
You're very good at pinching dollars.
Better than the board. No, I'm kidding.
Thanks for that. We love you anyway. It's just what we have to do. Mr. Trotter?
Are we gonna vote on this? If we do, y'all gonna talk them into asking for more money.
I just want to know, I want you to know that I have researched this, because when I read this on the computer and I'm doing my homework, I'm going, oh. And we all probably did the same thing and took a step back. And I start calling around Middle Tennessee. We got a problem in this department. Yes, sir.
One other,
Mr. Harris. We'll be back to you.
Gina and Ryan will tell you, we met for probably an hour and a half about this Friday. One question I failed to ask, this is based on a 4-day work week and a number of hours and a number of days and all.
It was a way to back into our total top-out
Correct.
number.
But it is stated in there that the other 3 days of the week, he is subject to be called.
24/7.
Okay, email.
Absolutely.
If we have a crisis.
How will the compensation work in that if he is answering emails, he's
If he's
called?
working, he's paid, and it counts towards that maximum.
Okay.
If he's not working.
I thought that was it. I
Yeah.
just needed some more.
And I'll say, and Mr. Sachs, if you looked at his resume, there's no
it's
way we
excellent.
could touch him
excellent.
financially, but he has experience. He knows that these other utilities, electric municipals, struggle, and he knows what people are supposed to make, and so we're going to be leaning on him to help us.
I'm not sure we're not going to have to address this in a meeting, an individual special call meeting to talk about this subject because we've got some real issues with pay. Alderman Hubbard, you had your hand up.
Yes. Also, to go along with what the mayor says, not only Middle Tennessee, he's one of the top in the state of Tennessee and one of the best in the TVA system. So I'm proud, sir, that you're bringing that to us.
Any other questions? No more discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Welcome on board.
Welcome to the city of Springfield. All right, we'll move on to our consent doc.
No.
What?
Three
Oh,
consent.
I'm sorry. Just trying to see if y'all are awake. I'll move back up. I just moved on. 3.10, discuss and possible take action on the request for the Robertson County Fair Board to waive the disconnect and reconnect fees for several meters at the fairgrounds. Do we have a motion to discuss in a second? Motion made by Vice Mayor Harris and a second by Alderman Arnold. Sorry, I just moved way on down the agenda. Yes, sir, Mr. Harris.
Mayor, as we all know, the effects of what COVID-19 has been for everyone, this request was made to me by the Fair Board to consider. They have Gina can tell you exactly how many meters are there. I think is it six?
There's eight electric, 3 water, and 2 gas that are active.
That are active meters, and they're talking about disconnect and reconnect of these meters and for us to waive these fees as they have had no income or very limited income this year. Of course, as we all know, the fair has been canceled. That's been their main source of income and other events that are there. It's probably would be in their best interest to disconnect some of these meters for the minimum amount that they're paying for them each month. It's going to be a savings to them. In talking with Nikki today, and I think these are probably considered commercial meters.
Yes.
But there is a way to disconnect, and that they would be able to do this at a minimum fee of, I think, $50. And that's the electric department. Is the gas and the water the same?
It would be $50 for all the meters that they disconnect.
So they're looking at 8 or 9
If they
meters.
if they did all of them, it would be 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, but I don't think they want to do, it was what?
It's about 8 or 9
5?
meters, is that total, Chad?
5 electrics, 1 gas, and 1 water.
Okay.
So a total of 7, it's $350.
Right.
It would be my motion to this board that we waive any fees for these reconnects up to $350. And that'd be for a 1-year period.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Harris to waive those fees for 1 year.
Amend on here, just so I can put it in.
Okay, we're going to give her some time to type that in for.
We need a second.
We have a second. I will say that the Fair Board has cooperated in all the things in the event for the county, and I'm so sorry that they had to cancel the fair. I know their money's limited.
To make clarification, there is no fee for disconnect, is that correct? Okay, it's only for reconnect. That's what.
The fair and the parade will be so missed this year. I don't think I've ever missed a fair in Robertson County.
Can I read this back?
Yes, ma'am. Please read.
Alderman Harris moved to waive the disconnect and reconnect fees for the Robertson County Fair Board up to an amount of $350 for a period of 1 year.
Okay. And we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion on the motion on the floor?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes, sir.
This is only good for, this $350, is this the estimated total cost of connection fees? Is that where we're getting this figure?
Yes. Yes.
And it's just for 1 year?
1 year. 1 year from today?
That's fine, I mean, because they're basing their expenses on what their income is, and their income is very limited this year, so we're hoping next year that it's going to be. From what I'm understanding from them, they're talking about disconnecting the majority of these the 1st of November and reconnecting probably not the majority of them the 1st of March. Some of them will be staggered out, so that's why I put it out to a year of this date.
Thank you for explaining.
I'm
Mr.
surprised that we've been charging them any at all.
Okay.
I don't believe they have disconnected any meters in the past, have you?
They're paying minimum bills.
Yeah.
We pay minimum bills. We have one meter that's in the demand mode, but the minimum cost us $325 a month. Hasn't been used since April.
So it's really going to be a great savings for them to not pay these minimums, and then we're going to help them out some on the reconnect fee, because some of the commercial meters could call for a $250 reconnect. Is that correct? We're moving that down to $50 to help them out in that respect.
Okay. Other discussion?
If it passes.
Other discussion? No. No more discussion? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the votes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. I sure hope we see the fair next year. 3.11, discuss and possible take action to approve the CSX closing agreement. Will we?
Don't need that now.
No, we don't need that.
So can we just pull it?
Yeah.
Mayor,
Start.
next time we get into any negotiations with the railroad, I'd like to be part of it. I don't know how we got to a negotiated point where we're tying street closings in with this down here, but
Okay.
I think that wasn't handled well.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the consent doc. Thank you for stepping up to the plate.
Mayor, without objection,
Yes.
I move we take it as one.
Okay. Are there any objections to taking it as a group? Do we have a motion by Alderman Hubbard? A second?
Mr. Harris made the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. I'm reading what's on the screen.
Hold on.
It's fine, but
It's fine?
yeah,
Okay.
just change it.
Okay. Motion by Alderman Hubbard, a second by Alderman Gregg. Ready for the consent doc as a whole. We're ready to vote. Any questions on it before we vote? No questions? We're ready for a vote. Anyone like to change their vote? Please record the vote.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to this. I'm sorry, did you have something?
No, ma'am.
Okay, city manager's report, Ms. Gina Holt.
Okay, just wanted, even though we approved it tonight, I just wanted to remind everybody about the movies in the park and to thank Walmart again. But the first one, of course, is August 21st at Martin Luther King Jr. Park, and it's going to be Aladdin, correct? And then it will move to Travis Price and then back. So you need to pay attention, but it's for August, September, and October, and then starting up again in May of next year. So this is definitely something to look forward to.
And it moves to the center if it rains.
Right. And then wanted to say, last month, the census, we cannot forget our census. This month, the city of Springfield has a self-response rate of 57.8%. Last month, it was 56.5%, so we've gone up a little over 1%. The county has a rate of 67.4%, and the state rate is 63.1%. So I think they're on schedule, or they may have actually moved it up for all the counting to be over by the end of September. So it's coming up pretty soon because they have a statutory deadline to get everything done by the end of December of this year. So we really do have to get our numbers up the best we can. And last but not least, and it cannot be, you can't say enough about today, 100 years ago, we know what happened, the 19th Amendment, and I can't believe nobody in here has mentioned that today.
I was going to
But it was ratified by the state of Tennessee on this date 100 years ago, which was the official adoption date was like a week later. So, and of course, you all know the history there. Tennessee played a huge role in this. It was so exciting. It was down to the last minute, the last state, the last minute, the last vote. I mean, it couldn't get any more dramatic than it was. So I can obviously say that Mayor Schneider, Alderman Arnold, and I have benefited greatly from that. Now, some of you all probably tonight aren't so excited about it, but we're definitely grateful and just have to acknowledge this fine day 100 years ago. And thanks to all of the women that went before us.
Well, and I will say that City Manager Gina Holt and I both spoke today at the Robertson County Museum about the subject of women having the rights to vote. So thank you, Ms. Holt, for coming out with me today. Mr. Hubbard?
Yes, I would just like to make two appeals. First of all, for the citizens to abide by the twice a year pickup. City's getting a little trashy. And secondly, we had 2 young men to get killed. It takes a whole village to raise our children. So please, talk to someone that you know. Put the message out that, we can't afford to lose our kids. So I appeal to you for that, okay? Because it might hit home one day.
Well, and we do need to clean up around. That is a very good statement. Please, let's help each other to clean up our city and beautify it. This meeting is adjourned.